Welcome to the Red Couch, and for today's program, we celebrate International Women's Day. My very special guest today is none other than Ermine Darroux. She is Dominican by birth. She lives in Barbados, and we're going to hear a little bit about her story, her life, her growing up in Dominica, her family life, and her social life to some extent too as well, her business life, and her community life. She is currently the president of the Rotary Club of Barbados. Welcome.
Thank you, Vic. Thank you. Should I say past President Vic? Thank you for inviting me to the Red Couch.
You're most welcome. So Ermine, you are part of that emerging group of professional women all over the Caribbean who are in leadership roles. But you started out growing up in the country of your birth, which is Dominica. And Dominica is such a beautiful island. For those people who have never been, they don't know what they're missing, of course. I've enjoyed all of my visits, and I'm overdue for one to Dominica. Tell me a little bit about what life was like. Where did you grow up in Dominica? I believe you said in another conversation we were having earlier, your dad was Commissioner of Police?
Yes. So
You were well protected then?
Yes, definitely.
Must have been difficult trying to get a date boy in that household.
Oh my God, just try going to a reggae show. Try asking him to go to a reggae show. But growing up in Dominica was, very simple. We had a very large family. Growing up, everyone was there, grandparents, grandmothers, aunts, everyone was around me. So it was really a good experience for me as a child, but I say very protected, especially my mom. She was very protected. She would be like, oh, that's not a good friend, choose my friends. And it was a life of protection, but
guarded.
Very guarded. And I believe the ultimate goal was to ensure that I am raised in a way that is what you can consider a very decent young lady. Yes.
So were you in a rural or were you a city girl?
No, I'm actually what we say a country girl.
A country girl.
So I was born and raised in the southeast coast of Dominica, and just around the age of 10, 11, I moved to what you call city life. So I have a mix of the country girl or the rural girl and a bit of city life as well. Where
do you go to school?
I went to school. I started off in the Monjon Government School, which is towards the southeast coast of Dominica. And for high school, I attended one of the most prestigious high school, the Dominica Grammar School. And thereafter, the sixth form college, which is now called the Dominica State College. I completed my postgraduate education with the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill School of Business, where I pursued and completed very successfully, an MBA.
Wonderful, yes. Wonderful. So, growing up in Dominica, Dominica is a country of many rivers. You Dominicans, claim that you have a river for every day of the year, 365. I'm not sure how true that is, but I've seen a lot of rivers.
There are a lot of rivers in Dominica, and when it rains, a new river is created.
And it's always raining.
It's always
it's always
raining.
Yeah.
Yes, lush and green and beautiful in its natural form, and I that's one of the things I love about Dominica. Whenever I go back home, it's all about enjoying nature. Revive, rest, relaxation, and we need that. We need that in our lives. It cannot always be in the hustle and bustle or in the city life setting. You need to get into that relaxation zone at some point.
And of course, you have the waterfalls as well.
Oh yes, beautiful.
Victoria is probably my favorite.
I wonder if it's the name.
I never thought about that. My favorite river for obvious reasons was the Layou River,
Yes,
because
that's
there
the
used to be a
longest river.
hotel there called the Layou River Inn.
Yes.
And I stayed there for a few weeks while doing some work for UNESCO
Oh, wow.
with Dominica Broadcasting.
Yes.
And Farida and my middle daughter and I spent 2 glorious weeks there, and then I went back the following year for a follow-up and so on. So I used to rush home in the afternoon to be able to go and jump into that river and enjoy the pristine waters of the Layou River Inn. Now, of course, being Dominican and having all this water and all these waterfalls and so on, that must be quite a transition to Barbados.
Yes, but I think for me, I've always been flexible and adaptable to change. And I remember that tagline when I joined RBC Royal Bank in Dominica, that then when they provided us with our mandate, our key results, expectations, one of the taglines was be flexible and adaptable to change.
Be flexible and adaptable to change. What a wonderful slogan. Thank you, RBC.
And then, you as you move into life, you realize things will never be the same. There's always changes. What you did yesterday in the office, this morning, it's a different setting, and you have to adapt. You have to move on. Otherwise, you're going to get left back. So I think it's not only a good tagline for me when I started at RBC, but just to apply it in my everyday life.
And growing up with your dad, who was such a public figure, how did that play out in terms of, like, your social life and that sort of stuff and so on?
I think it was a good experience for me because that was an opportunity for me to network. I remember when the diplomatic events and the official events that my dad would take me along, and for the first time I saw politicians on different parties mixing and mingling with each other, and I remember looking at them as a child. These are the same people that Dominicans are calling the radio and talking about, and this one, and fighting with each other. And there it is, 2 politicians from a different party knocking glasses and socializing. So it was good to get that exposure as a child, and then you begin to understand how the system works and how to network, an important skill that I developed early, networking, dealing with that in that environment. And for me, my dad himself, I think he's still a role model for me. And I will talk about what led me to service, which started with my dad.
I would expect that. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the idea of having a dad who was a commissioner of police, I mean, that's a very unique kind of experience. But what about family life? What was family life like growing up in Dominica?
Well, I can't say that we were one of the fortunate families. Within our own family, there was migration. Quite a few family members moved to England and America, and wherever the opportunity came. So for us, moving from one space to the next it didn't start with me. It started back generations ago where, our family was used to moving around wherever the opportunities lie. So we had family everywhere that could provide support to us in Dominica or wherever we are. So I would consider our family life was very, very fortunate, very fortunate. Yeah.
In a sense, if you look at Caribbean people, I'm not sure if there's any studies ever been done on that. But we tend to be very, I wouldn't say nomadic, but migratory. And perhaps a lot of that comes from the fact that we were uprooted, from our ancestral homes and brought to the Caribbean. So in a sense, forced migration.
Right.
But Caribbean people have always, when I listen to Sir Henry Fraser's Did You Know series, and you hear some amazing stories of 100 years ago of this black person going to England and, in obviously a very racial kind of environment, where you're an absolute minority. You're so much a minority that people have never seen anybody that looks like you. And yet going into that kind of environment and excelling and so on.
Yes.
And we have that history, whether it's in nursing, London transport, in the US or Canada and so on. of being, migrants.
Yes, yeah. So even then, you hear that, sometimes back home they say there are more Dominicans living abroad than in Dominica itself. And that might very well be a true statement, because even in my own family, majority of my family are out of Dominica. Very few family members are in Dominica.
Same here.
What is happening is that when they retire, they move back home.
Yes.
But majority of my own family members are abroad.
Yes.
So it's the truth.
Well, I think that's generally true. 50% of my kids live overseas.
There you go.
One in Japan, one in Texas.
Yes.
And so on. And both of my grandchildren live in outside of Barbados too as well. And all but one of my siblings. So yeah, I can identify with that. So what drove you? Obviously, as you're coming to the end of your secondary schooling, you're doing your A levels and so on, you begin to think about careers and that kind of stuff. What drove you in the direction that you went in?
Back then, banking was one of those jobs back in the day that was considered very prestigious. I really like to see the bankers walk around.
Back in the day? Surely it still is.
Back in the day. So, that was one. Somehow, I always wanted to work in the bank. I don't know what I wanted to do in the bank, but I wanted to work in the bank. So I applied, kept applying to work at RBC, and somehow I was drawn to RBC. So believe it or not, I submitted 5 applications on 5 different occasions. And one day, while working with a hotel back in Dominica, I got the call from RBC to come in for an interview, and that was it.
Wow.
Went in and I got
5 times.
5 times, 5 applications later. So never give up.
Try and try and try and try and try. You will succeed.
And I actually kept copies of these applications, because even thinking back, I don't know why I applied 5 times, but I did.
Because most people, if they applied once, they might go a second time, but if they got a rejection a second time or no response,
they will give up.
They will give up. And that's natural. You say, well,
natural,
I'm not wanted, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So you got your opportunity to get into banking and into the bank of your choice, which was RBC.
Yes, I got into banking, and during that time, even before I got in, I opened an account. So I was a client before I started working as an employee.
That's networking. That's marketing.
That's networking. Yes. So yes, it was working in the bank in Dominica was a very, very good experience. I started as a teller, which is what it was called back then. It's no longer under that title.
Oh, what title do they use now?
Financial Services Associate.
Wow. Okay.
There's various.
Good thing I don't go into the bank and ask if there are any tellers available.
Yes, they would be like, who?
Whoa.
Yes, so since then the names have changed a bit.
Yeah.
But I started from the bottom and,
best way to start.
Made my way to the top. When I started in the bank, we still worked with paper where you had to, do the vouchers.
Did you have the little book?
The little book and all of that. And
my producer doesn't know what we're talking about, but the little book, she's not going like, there's a little deposit book.
Deposit book,
I still have one from one of the banks somewhere. I saw it recently, and I think I'll continue to keep that. Just like the little red book that you had for your driver's license as well.
Yeah, so I started and then I moved, for various departments within the bank. And the last department I worked in Dominica, I headed the commercial department, where I was responsible for the business part, the commercial business for the bank.
How did you end up in Barbados?
Well, after that role, Barbados was considered one of our regional office for the Eastern Caribbean. So a lot of our training for employee training took place in Barbados. So one year I came in here for training, and one of my colleagues said, there is a role coming up, you should apply for it. I'm like, okay, but I was like, okay. She said to apply. I went back home and I did what she said. Not that I was looking to move, but I did what she said. I applied for the role and then I was successful. And then came the time to move. I'm like, oh my God, I have to move now. Because there was no plan to move, or to move to Barbados or anywhere at the time. So the opportunity came, I applied, and thankfully I was successful, and I moved here in Barbados. So that's where I've been since March of 2015. So this next month will be 9 years. 9 years.
And of course, during that time, you're also married.
Yes.
Your husband is Dominican.
My husband is Dominican.
So how does that work? Because he's got a business in Dominica. So what do you guys do? You commute a lot?
Yes, we commute a lot. It's only 45 to 50 minutes, so it's not a long distance. So I'm
not dealing with that part. I'm dealing with the ticket price.
Yeah. We need our own plane.
Yeah, we do. Yes, you probably do. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I mean, for us, when we started off where he was in one part of, he was in one country, I was in another. So it was, just a continuation of where we started to where we are today. Mm-hmm. So we continue to move back and forth.
And you have a daughter?
I have a daughter, Sarina. She's 8 years old. She's at St. Gabriel's.
Where was she born?
She was born here in Barbados.
Oh, so she's Bajan?
Yes.
Like to hear her accent.
Oh boy, it's a mix, and she switches from one to the next. Yes,
good stuff. Good stuff. So your career is really now soaring because you're in RBC and the commercial department, but you also have branched out into community life in Barbados, and you became a Rotarian, and you are president of the Rotary Club of Barbados. So tell me a little bit about your life in community service, and how did you get involved as a non-Barbadian resident working in a very busy kind of field, banking and so on at RBC? Yeah. How did that come about, and what has that experience been like for you?
I think it's interesting. For me, getting into community service, it may have been genetic, because my dad, before he retired from the police force as commissioner, he started a community policing program in Dominica. And that program was specifically set up to build the relationship between the community and the police. At the time, there was an increase in violence, and he developed that program to help curb the level of violence. And it was an extremely good program. So the service part in me, I would say it came, from my dad and passed on to me. So in Dominica, my then country manager was Rotarian, and she too was the president of the club at that time. And I was her executive assistant in the bank, but I was sort of her executive assistant in Rotary. So I, provided administrative support to Rotary, helped them with their fundraisers and so on. But back then, I looked at Rotary as a club for seniors and not for me as a young person. So I was never interested in joining the club, but I continued to assist them whenever she asked me to assist her. Now, when I moved to Barbados in 2015, I think the year after, Barbados hosted the district conference. Yeah. Right. So our bank, RBC, was a sponsor for one of the events. So RBC sent me to attend the opening ceremony of the district conference as a sponsor rep. So I attended the event, and I'm like, I should really consider, joining Rotary, given I have a little background in Rotary, but now that I'm here. And that's how, from there, I got invited to lunch meeting by past President Brenda, and I said, okay, it's a good avenue.
And no regrets since then. I know that you've had none.
Absolutely no regrets.
Yeah.
Absolutely no regrets. It has been a beautiful journey. I joined in 2017, and the following year, past President Peter asked me to be his secretary, and since then I have been sitting on the board in
different capacities. And now you sit as president.
Yes.
And you've had a really busy year. Your year has been full of activity. I mean, it's phenomenal, the amount of work. It's almost like a full-time job, isn't it?
Yes, it is a full-time job. I think when I started in July, the theme for this Rotary year is to create hope in the world from an international level, and we looked at it as creating hope in our community. So with that theme, and I started, I'm like, oh my, together with our vision, Rotary International Vision, where we see a world where people come together to create lasting change in the communities you operate or you live in. So combine that with creating hope, and a club with, at the time now we are 110 members, so it's a very large club.
Very large club.
So how do you combine that vision and that theme and to engage Rotarians, 110 members. So with that vision, we set out our plan and looked at, opportunities where we could create engaging activities for everyone. Activities for persons like you, past President Vig, and activities for the younger generation. And I think, our board, together with our board, we are achieving some of that.
You have. You certainly are. Well, I think you've been, I think you are an inspiration to a lot of young women, and, having role models for our young people, not just the women, but the men too as well, I think is remarkable that people like yourself, it took me a lot longer to become president of the Rotary Club of Barbados. You made it in record time. But well done to you, President Ermine. And I certainly look forward to bigger and better things for you in the future. So I want to ask you quickly now a couple of rapid fire questions for International Women's Day. Who are the women that you look up to, that you would hold up as models for yourself?
Yes, for role model, I will start with Dame Eugenia Charles out of Dominica. That's former Prime Minister Dame Eugenia.
She was
Charles.
A trailblazer.
Yes, yeah. She was known as the Iron Lady.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she set the pace for a lot of women in the Caribbean in terms of taking women to that level. And I think she played a role that many women, not only in the Caribbean, but globally, looked up to her.
I think she was the first female prime minister in the Caribbean.
Yes,
as well.
yes.
Yeah.
I met her after when she retired, and she left a note with me, which I still keep that note. Best wishes in the future. So thank you, Dame Eugenia, for that.
I'm sure she's smiling.
We also admire Michelle Obama in a role as a mom. She too is a girl mom like me, and how she was able to still be a mom and carry out her role in a professional capacity. So I admire that, and she would be also one of my heroes.
And in terms of your career, what do you see in your future? Have you set some personal goals?
Well, yes, I always have goals and switch them and update them. But like I said, somehow I'm stuck in banking. Yeah. I'm stuck in banking.
Because you love it.
I love banking, and especially working with my commercial high net worth group. Just when a client comes to you and say, I have this plan for this business, and you could see that business move from the bottom up, that nothing better than that. And just to live the dream with them, understand their needs, work with them and get them to that level, it's an amazing feeling. So I have enjoyed that, and I'm still enjoying it, working with my corporate clients. So wherever that takes me, I'll be happy. I always say to myself, if banking doesn't work out, I'm moving to the hospitality or tourism industry.
And I think, in a sense, all Caribbean people work in hospitality because we treat our guests and our visitors special. What do you like most about living in Barbados?
Oh, Barbados, it's a lot of things I like about Barbados. You have access to a lot of things, access to the global access. You can move at any time. Access to resources, be it for in my professional or personal life. And, I've had a very good experience with the people, which was, from day one, I've always had a good experience with Barbadians.
So people.
With people, yes. And, once you have that experience, you're connected, and, you're just part of them. Because even then they tell me, I remember I had a conversation with somebody at Central Bank, and he was like, you all. But then he was speaking to me in the capacity like I'm a Barbadian. So I went back, to tell my colleagues, and I'm like, he forgot I'm not from Barbados. So, one of my colleagues, Brian, notices, he said, Ermine, you are one of us. So that spoke volume for me, and it really makes me feel like I am home. Yeah.
And what do you miss most about Dominica?
Oh, some people say the food. But some of the food, like the breadfruit, I can, I
Yeah.
have access to it here.
Yes.
But whenever I go back to Dominica, which is as often as I can, the first I go to the strictly local restaurant. So I have local food, the smoked meat, the broth, the soups, strictly local food.
Well, I look forward to my next visit to Dominica.
We should do that
And
together.
we should do that together.
Yes.
Let's make a plan
For the World Creole Music Festival, I'll take you to Dominica.
Lovely, and I've always wanted to go to that.
Yes.
Ermine Darroux, president of the Rotary Club of Barbados, and one of the trailblazers in the world of business, working in the commercial sector, helping clients to make money and to be successful through Royal Bank Barbados, RBC Barbados. Thank you very much for being my very special guest. She is currently the president of the Rotary Club of Barbados. I believe we are the largest club in the district.
We are.
110 members.
And counting.
Yeah, and counting, So thank you very much for being my really special guest as we celebrate women locally, regionally, and internationally for International Women's Day, and also for being here on the Red Couch.